Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about plants. So, this is Holly Robinson, and this is part one. So, here we go. Now, plants belong in the domain Eukarya, which means that they have a nucleus, they have organelles, they belong in their own kingdom called Kingdom Plantae. And plants evolved from green algae that lived in fresh water about 450 million years ago. Okay. And plants have chlorophyll A and B. Now, chlorophyll A helps them absorb red and blue light. Okay. Chlorophyll B helps them reflect green light. Okay, so they reflect green, and therefore that's why most of the time they look green to us. And chlorophyll B also helps with photosynthesis. And then there are other pigments that you don't need to worry about. Now, plants store their excess carbohydrates as starch, okay, which is different from animals. We store our carbs as glycogen, okay, but plants use starch to store their excess, carbohydrates or sugars. And then both of them have cellulose in their cell walls. Okay, so plants definitely use cellulose. That's why our vegetables are crunchy when we bite into them. Okay, they have cell walls. Animals do not. Okay, now land plants are most closely related to green algae that live in fresh water called charophytes. Okay, and land plants are constantly threatened with drying out. Okay, especially when a plant is reproducing. But we're basically the land plants are most closely related to charophytes. Okay, green algae. Now there were five big events that helped plants eventually adapt to living on land. The first one was embryo protection. Okay, embryo protection kept it from drying out. Okay, drying out, and therefore embryos could be on land, okay, and survive. And the next one, vascular tissue. Vascular tissue is really important in a plant because it transports water and nutrients throughout the plant body. Okay, and you've got to have that in many plants for them to be able to survive out of water. And then megaphylls. Megaphylls are large leaves that increase the surface area for photosynthesis. Okay, so that helped plants be able to live longer on land and survive. And then seeds. Seeds contain an embryo, a protective coat. They've got supportive nutrients. Okay, gymnosperms or seed-bearing plants. Those were the very first plants with seeds. Okay, we'll talk about gymnosperms in just a little bit. The development of flowers. Okay, angiosperms or the flower-producing plants. Those are the only group to have flowers actually, and they give rise to fruits and lots of pollinators. Okay, so flowers are important too because we're able to eat the fruit on many plants. Now, many scientists believe that if all the plants on Earth died, most of the other organisms would be wiped out too, including humans and animals. Okay, we would all die with the plants or afterwards. But if all the animals died on the Earth, many plants, they would survive and flourish and they would be just fine without us. Just something to think about. Now, there were five big innovations here, okay, that helped plants be able to eventually live on land. And if you look at the top of where these little arrows are, right here you've got embryo protection, vascular tissue, megaphylls, seeds, and fruits. Okay, those are the big adaptations that, or evolutionary events actually, that helped plants kind of move from being, all water plants to also being land plants as well. Now, these are the big characteristics that kind of distinguish the big plant groups, and these are the groups of plants themselves. Okay, you've got the very simplest, which are charophytes right here, and then you have liverworts and mosses, okay, which are non-vascular, and then you're going to move on up to lycophytes, and then ferns, and then seed producing, which are gymnosperms, and then fruit producing or flower producing, which are the flowering plants. Now, basically, plants are going to produce spores, and they're also going to produce gametes. Okay, so you've got kind of a cycle going on here. Um, let's talk about sporophytes. Sporophytes, which are diploid, okay, they produce spores by meiosis. And a spore is a haploid reproductive cell that develops into a new organism, but it does not need to fuse with another reproductive cell. Okay. And spores are going to undergo mitosis and then become gametophytes. And gametophytes make gametes by mitosis. Okay. And gametes are eggs and sperm. Okay, they're produced by mitotic cell division, and then the sperm and the egg fuse, and they make a zygote that's going to undergo mitosis and then become a sporophyte, and then the cycle just starts all over again. Okay. And plants are going to be different as far as which generation is going to be dominant. If it's a land plant, you're going to have more of a sporophyte dominance or emphasis. Now, if we look at this cycle here, we'll start up at the top at the sporophyte. Basically, the sporophyte goes into a sporangium, okay, which will split during meiosis, and that's going to help make spores. Okay, the spores are going to multiply themselves by mitosis, and they're going to become gametophytes. And these gametophytes will multiply themselves, and you'll end up having gametes. Okay, gametes, eggs and sperm. They'll fertilize each other and become a zygote, and then multiply, and then they become sporophytes all over again. Okay, so this cycle is constantly repeating itself. Now, just for this picture right here, you need to know as plants became adapted to life on land, the size of the gametophytes decreased and the size of the sporophytes increased. Okay, so as you're getting towards more land plants, there were basically more of an emphasis on sporophytes. Okay, so as you can see here, you've got rhizoids, which are kind of root-like, okay, and then true roots started to pop up in like ferns, and then gymnosperms, and then angiosperms. Okay, and roots are just really important. Okay, it's good for you to know this. Roots anchor the plant in the soil and give it structure and support. Roots help it absorb the plant, that is, water and minerals. Roots help store and absorb water. Okay, they also produce hormones, things like that. So roots are a big deal. And so as you get more land plants, the roots became more predominant, in the plant. Okay. And sporophytes are always more prominent in land plants. Okay. Gametophytes are more for water plants. Now, non-vascular plants. Okay, non-vascular, just like their name, they lack vascular tissue. Okay, they do look kind of leafy, but they're called instead like root-like or stem-like or leaf-like, but they really don't have true roots, stems, or leaves. Okay, because by definition, root, stems, and leaves have vascular tissue. Okay, the gametophyte generation is dominant. Okay, you do have the flagellated sperm swimming to the egg in a continuous film of water. And there are three big divisions of non-vascular plants. Okay, you've got hornworts, liverworts, and mosses, and those make up the bryophytes. Let's take the first one here, liverworts. Now, you have leafy liverworts, and then you have those with a broad kind of thallus on them. Now, Marchantia has this real smooth upper surface. It's got rhizoids, which are root-like hairs that extend into the soil, and they reproduce sexually and asexually. Okay, let me show you a picture here. Now, you can have asexual reproduction by gemmae, which are groups of cells that detach from the thallus, and they asexually can start a new plant. Okay. And then you can also have sexual reproduction. Now, sexual reproduction, you can have antheridia, which is where sperm are made, or you can have archegonia, which is where the eggs are made. It's very important for you to know the difference between antheridia and archegonia. Antheridia makes sperm, archegonia makes eggs. Okay. Now, mosses. Mosses are found all over the world, from the Arctic Circle down to Antarctica. Okay. And they're found mostly in damp, kind of shady locations. You find some like in deserts, bogs, some streams. Okay. And they're pretty adaptable. They really live all over the place. And mosses become dormant if the environment becomes dry until the rain starts again. Okay. And most mosses can reproduce asexually by fragmentation and also reproduce sexually. Okay. Just about any part of the moss plant is able to grow into a leaf-like thallus, okay, or flat-lobed body. That's what a thallus is. Okay. And the gametophyte is the dominant generation, like most water plants. Now, this is the life cycle of, moss. Okay. Basically, in mosses, you've got mature gametophytes here. Okay. And mature gametophytes, it's either going to have archegonia or antheridia. Okay. Remember, antheridia is going to have the sperm, archegonia is going to have the egg. And when you get fertilization, basically the sperm are going to swim to the egg. Okay. And you're going to get fertilization in the zygote. Okay. And the zygote and the sporophyte are going to stay in the archegonium, kind of like a little egg sac there. And then the sporophyte, once it matures, it's got a foot that's buried in this female gametophyte tissue. Okay. And it's got a stalk on it, like a stem, and then it's also got an upper capsule, which is where meiosis happens and where the spores are made. Okay. The spores are made in the capsule. And then once the capsule falls off, that means that the spores are mature, and the spores are going to spread themselves out. Okay, the spores are going to be released, likely when there's a lot of wind. And then you're going to have all these spores, and then you get an immature gametophyte. Okay, the spore is going to germinate into a male or a female, okay, which is the protonema, the first stage of the male and female gametophytes. Okay, and then the cycle just starts all over again. Okay, this is going on all the time. Now, adaptations of uses of non-vascular plants. You might think that non-vascular plants really don't serve a lot of purpose, but they do. They help convert rocks to soil. They do help break them down. Peat moss is used as fuel. You can burn it. It holds water really well. It's used in like flower shops. Okay. It's used in gardens to improve the soil because it improves the water holding capacity of the soil. And then you find a lot of non-vascular plants like in cracks of sidewalks, stone walls, fences. Okay. They're very small, they're very simple, and they're very adaptable. Okay. And that's it.